Hello friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. We start today's video with a story that proves sometimes retail workers do get the last word. And it's glorious. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Finally went off on a customer and totally got away with it. I work part-time at a convenience store while going to college on my GI Bill. Honestly, the job is mostly just to keep me busy during the hours I'm not in class or gaming. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps me from going stir-crazy. Lately, though, things have been more hectic than usual. We had 2 employees quit unexpectedly, and while my hours were supposed to be part-time, I've basically been working full-time for the past couple of weeks. Between juggling full-time school, full-time work, and still trying to get in some gaming to unwind, I've been running on fumes. I was already stretched thin, so I wasn't exactly in the mood when Karen showed up. It started out like any other transaction. She came up to the counter with way too many items to fit on our little bag carousel, so I had to stack some off to the side while I rang her up. As I'm handing her the bag, she spins the carousel around to grab them, and in the process, some of her stuff tips over and onto the floor. Nothing broke, it was just paper towels and napkins, but down they went. I immediately bent down to pick them up, but apparently that wasn't good enough for her. "You need to give me those for free," she barked, glaring at me like I'd personally wronged her. I blinked, trying to keep my cool. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't do that. The items are still clean and undamaged." That's when she absolutely lost it. She went off on a full rant about how rude I was, how I'd thrown her stuff on the ground, and, my personal favorite, how this was why I was just a lowly store clerk and didn't have a real job. At this point, I glanced around. There was no one else nearby except the guy behind her, one of our regulars who I've helped out a million times. I figured, what the hell? I was beyond tired of dealing with this nonsense. I leaned in slightly and in my calmest voice said, "Hey lady, you're a bit of a bee, just so you know." The look on her face was priceless. Her eyes went wide, her jaw dropped, and for a second, she was too shocked to speak. But then, of course, the floodgates opened. She started yelling loud enough for the whole store to hear, demanding to see my manager, saying she'd have me fired on the spot. So I paged my manager, who came up from the back. He asked her what was going on, and she launched into her tale about how I'd insulted her, called her names, and been horribly rude. When my manager turned to me for my side, I kept it simple. She started yelling, so I told her she was being rude. That's all I said. Now my manager knows me. We've worked together long enough that he trusts me, and I could see him sizing up the situation. Then Karen, thinking she had backup, pointed to the regular behind her. "He heard it," she said triumphantly. "Ask him." The regular, bless his soul, didn't even blink. "Hope he didn't say anything like that," he said. "This lady's nuts." That was that. My manager looked at her and said, "Ma'am, your transaction's over. It's time for you to leave the store." Her face turned a shade of red I didn't even know was possible. She huffed, cursed under her breath, and stormed out of the store. But before leaving, she shouted that she was going to fix my butt, whatever that meant. I watched her through the front window for a second, just to make sure she wasn't coming back in with a weapon or something. Instead, I saw her standing next to her car, absolutely losing it on her husband. The poor guy looked like he'd seen this kind of thing one too many times. A minute later, the husband came into the store. He looked embarrassed and tired. "I'm really sorry about that," he said quietly. "She can get like this sometimes. Just ignore her, okay? I hope she didn't cause too much trouble." He apologized again before they finally drove off. I've had a lot of rough days in retail, but I have to admit that this was one of the most satisfying moments I've ever had on the job. Sometimes you just need that one small victory to remind you that not every Karen gets to win. And our second story. He thought my driveway spot was free. I used to live in a duplex that shared a driveway with my neighbor. At the end of the driveway, there was a double car park, 2 spots side by side. Pretty straightforward setup, 1 spot for me, 1 for the neighbor. There wasn't much extra room, so keeping to your side of things was important if we all wanted to come and go without hassle. One evening, I came home after a long day at work, looking forward to kicking off my shoes and relaxing. But as I turned into the driveway, I saw something that made my blood pressure spike just a little. Someone had parked in my spot. Not just a little over the line or awkwardly close, but dead center in my space like they owned it. Next to them was my neighbor's car happily tucked into their spot. Didn't take much detective work to figure out what had happened. My neighbor must have had a friend over, and that friend decided the empty space next to my neighbor's car, my space, was free for the taking. Maybe they thought it was fair game since there wasn't a sign, or maybe they just didn't care. Either way, it was my spot, and they shouldn't have parked there. Now, I could have gone over to the neighbor's place right then and knocked, asked politely for the friend to move their car, and called it a day. But after a long shift, I didn't have the patience for that kind of diplomacy. Instead, I did what felt like the most logical solution at the time. I parked directly behind the offending car, completely blocking them in. The driveway was tight enough that there was no way they could wiggle their way out without my car moving first. Feeling quite pleased with myself, I went inside. My wife asked if I'd sorted out the parking situation, and I told her what I'd done. I only hope they need to leave before I do tomorrow morning, I said with a grin. There was something deeply satisfying about knowing that when they came out, ready to go home, they'd be greeted by the realization that they'd been well and truly boxed in. A little lesson in respecting other people's property. Sure enough, about 2 hours later, there was a soft knock at our door. It was one of those knocks where you can tell the person on the other side is feeling sheepish, maybe a little embarrassed. I opened the door, and standing there was a man who looked exactly as I'd imagined. A bit awkward, shifting his weight from foot to foot, trying to figure out how to start the conversation. "Hi," he began. I didn't realize that was your spot. I'm really sorry about that." He explained that he hadn't meant to cause any trouble, that he thought it was okay to park there, and that he wouldn't have done it if he'd known. Then came the inevitable request. "Would you mind moving your car so I can get out?" I let him stew for just a second, not enough to be cruel, just enough to let the lesson sink in, and then said, "Sure thing." I grabbed my keys, moved my car, and watched as he backed out, thanked me again, and drove off. I never saw him again. Whether he avoided visiting my neighbor after that or just made absolutely sure to never touch my parking spot again, I don't know. Either way, my space stayed safe from that day on. I've often thought back to that moment and wished I could have seen his face the exact moment he walked out and saw that he was stuck. That dawning realization, that little pang of regret for making a careless decision, I bet it was priceless. Sometimes the simplest actions send the clearest messages, and in this case, all it took was parking in just the right spot to make sure it didn't happen again. It's exactly what I hope to find when I come here. A small bit of revenge to ease frustration about something inconsequential but still annoying, and it doesn't actually hurt the other person, just makes them realize they were a bit of an a-hole. Cheers to you, OP. This was perfect. And our last story. An old sailor. I never thought I'd write my own r/pro revenge story, but my grandfather's tale is just too juicy to keep for family dinners only. Disclaimer, this happened in 2001. No smartphones, no drones, no TikTok, just good old-fashioned rage, justice, and a bit of legal wizardry. My grandfather's name is Semin, but we all just call him Grandpa. He's 83, all tendons and muscle, 6 wives over his lifetime, and 15 kids. Don't let anyone tell you sea air kills virility. He can still crush my hand in an arm wrestling match until my knuckles go white. I'm a 17-year-old high schooler. My dad is his only son from his canonical first marriage. He's a lawyer and lives with us in another state. Getting Grandpa to leave home is harder than raising a rum barrel from a sunken frigate. He hates planes with a passion. One way forward, no way back, and no place to light a smoke. Cars he tolerates, but if anyone hints at his age, he curses hard enough to peel the paint off the fence. But my sister was getting married, and Grandpa wouldn't miss his granddaughter's wedding. The plan, Dad flies to him, and they drive back slowly, road trip style, in Grandpa's 1978 Chevrolet Impala. His rants about planes were drowned out by the promise of a bottle of old rum at the wedding table. The wedding went well. The following days, Grandpa regaled everyone with endless sea tales. Kids laughed, adults blushed. 3 weeks later, they hit the road back. Grandpa grumbled the whole way about not being the one driving, but when they finally pulled up to his house in a quiet coastal town, the smell of gas-powered saws hit them like a punch in the face. Half the garage had been dismantled. 3 men in orange vests were sawing through beams like it was their backyard. Grandpa didn't even turn off the engine. "Hey, you feckless bee-turds," he shouted, climbing out the window since the door was stuck. "Who the hell let you onto my property?" One of the workers looked up from under a baseball cap. "Ma'am, we're supposed to finish the teardown this week. The property's been sold." "Ma'am, who?" Grandpa exploded. His grip on the steering wheel had been so tight it looked like the Impala might strangle someone. "You better hope I explain where to shove that flashlight before I start demonstrating." The workers exchanged glances. One stepped back, one swallowed, the third moved his grinder like he was crossing himself. They didn't get a word in before an old neighbor watching from the porch, everyone calls him the judge, called 911. "Officer, there's a guy yelling at some men on my neighbor's property, and I think the house is about to fall from the screaming." 5 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up, lights flashing off the Impala's chrome. A young cop and a gloomy partner stepped out. "Good morning, sirs. Gentlemen," the older one started, but Grandpa cut in. "Good. The day's only good when you got rum in your pocket and no customs in port. Someone's stealing my garage." Dad deployed his lawyer smile. Number 3, restrained outrage. "Officer, we're the legal owners. Deed from 63, property taxes paid for this quarter. These men claim the property was sold." "Sold to who?" the officer asked the workers. We're from Seaside Realty," the contractor mumbled. "We just cut what we're paid to cut." Grandpa snorted. "You'll be cutting your boss's bleeps when I find them." "Dad, please," my father whispered. "Let's explain." The officer separated the workers and took their details. Meanwhile, the three of us went inside. The lock was intact, but in the mailbox was a forged bill of sale. Signature, Semin M.K. Crooked like a drunken compass. Dad pointed right at it. "See, Dad, this clearly isn't your signature." "Son of a bee," Grandpa muttered, wiping dust from the doorframe. "A fake, just like duty-free booze." Dad called the local registry office just before closing time. Luckily, someone picked up. "Miss Wilson, this is Attorney Kostenko. Has any transfer been registered today for parcel number?" He read the plot ID. Pause. Static crackled. "No, Mr. Kostenko. No new entries," the secretary said. Meanwhile, the cops were still filling out paperwork. Dad confirmed no sale was ever recorded, meaning the workers' documents were fake. Grandpa let out such a triumphant curse that the younger cop turned red and fiddled with his radio. "Here's how it's going to be," Grandpa boomed, slipping on his old Navy coat. "You barbershop boys take your buzzsaws and march yourselves to the gate before I give you the Marine haircut." Seeing the cops weren't on their side, the workers ditched their tools and ran. One dropped a folder with the Seaside Realty logo on it, probably hoping to get paid later. Turned out to be useful. 10 minutes later, cup of tea, squealing dial-up modem, and a Sony dictaphone for good measure. Dad called the number on the fake documents. Click, click, click. Then came the voice. "Seaside Realty, Mr. Dawson speaking. How can I help you?" "This is Attorney Kostenko," Dad said, "calling about 428 Harbor Lane. Your guys are dismantling our garage." "Oh, must be a misunderstanding," Dawson stammered. "Let's meet and work this out." "Perfect. 1 hour, police precinct. Coffee's free for witnesses. Don't be late." Grandpa, listening on speakerphone, smirked. "I've seen this work it out crap before. In 63, a guy tried to work out my chart. Dove off the dock, no teeth." 45 minutes later, a white Lexus purred up. Out stepped a porcelain-skinned brunette in pearls, like she just left a cocktail party. "Are you Mr. Sem?" she asked hesitantly. "I'm the Sem," Grandpa growled. "And you are?" "Janice Whitmore," name changed. "I bought this lot at auction. I was told the place was condemned, owner in a nursing home. This is a mistake, isn't it?" Dad handed her a copy of the real deed. She sank onto the porch steps. "Then I've been scammed. I paid $150,000 in cash." Grandpa slapped the railing. "Well, ma'am, you're up the crow's nest with the rest of us. Let's go see the law." On the way, Grandpa even tried flirting with her, so Dad says. Lieutenant Gardner met us at the station, sucking in his gut. "Your realtors beat you here," he grinned. "Our unit caught Mr. Dawson and Mr. Wilkes trying to flee town in a rental Mazda. In the trunk, a suitcase of cash and 7 fake IDs. Janice filed a fraud report, and Dad added a civil suit, damages plus emotional distress. Detectives soon found 2 more fake deeds from the same agency in other states. The FBI jumped in fast. Interstate wire fraud and forged documents made it federal. The investigation moved like a ship in full sail. Within 3 months, 6 victims testified in district court with over $1 million stolen. When Grandpa took the stand, well, let's just say the judge didn't interrupt because he was clearly enjoying himself. "I was sailing the seas when your lawyers were still pooping in diapers," Grandpa began. "This isn't just theft. Theft is sneaking into someone's cabin and stealing their beer. These B-turds stole the whole ship." The jury laughed, but their eyes stayed cold. The prosecutor requested maximum sentencing. The judge delivered. 18 years each with mandatory restitution to all victims. Grandpa tugged on his coat and whispered to me, "Too bad it wasn't 25. But hey, at least their meals will be free. Save the taxpayers a few bucks." Ha! A month later, a Rio construction crew arrived with legit paperwork. Turns out Janice's dad was a pretty powerful politician. She funded a full renovation and a new garage to make up for her naivete. On top stood a shiny metal shark-shaped weather vane gleaming like a blade. Seems like the perfect place to end the tale. Don't mess with an old sailor's property. He's got more fight and lawyers than you bargained for. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.